Apparently, Kevin Durant has not been in contact or communication with the Nets front office since they were swept out of the playoffs. Now, I know to a lot of people that may not mean anything, but with Kyrie being in the headlines, Brooklyn obviously ending the way that they did, and now the best player on the team is not talking to anybody, completely distancing himself. Kyle, I'll pose this one to you. Do you think that there's anything of this KD news, or is this just smoke blown because Brooklyn's on fire right now?
Kev, do you talk to your work when you're off from work on your
No,
days off? Yeah,
no.
that's kind of how I feel about this one. To be quite honest with you, I don't think that this is a big deal. I think KD is just kind of getting away, doing his own thing now that the NBA offseason it's kind of like off and running for him. And I think Brooklyn's just kind of giving him space, and I think KD is kind of doing the same thing. So, I mean, look, when we look at Kevin Durant, obviously one of the best players in the NBA, probably the best player on Brooklyn, and it ended unfortunately for them. They got annihilated by Boston in the first round of the playoffs. I mean, Boston's a great team. They're in the not the Western Conference, the Eastern Conference Finals for a reason. They're vying for an NBA title this year if they play their cards right. But I think a lot of people were caught off guard by just how inept Brooklyn looked against Boston because you got Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, and they just couldn't find a way to even win one game against Boston. Now, I think when it comes to Kevin Durant, I think he's just taking some time away just to get away from it all. And honestly, we've seen this from other players in the NBA. You could look at LeBron James. I mean, LeBron James, once the NBA season comes to an end, he's usually on vacation for like 2 to 3 weeks after. Like he'll go to like Europe, he'll go to like South America or Central America. He'll go somewhere for like 2 or 3 weeks to like just completely get away from basketball. And honestly, I think that's not necessarily a bad thing. When you've been dedicated to your craft for 8 to 9 months consistently, and when it finally comes to an end, no matter what the result is, you deserve some time off. You deserve some time to be able to decompress, reflect on the season, and then usually after that vacation time is over with, the family time comes to an end. You got to go back in the lab and get back to it. And I think, Kevin is just in that process of I'm going to take some time to just kind of focus on me, kind of decompress for the season. And then, probably within the next week or two, start, ramping up for the upcoming season with Brooklyn. So I'm with the mindset this is not that big of a deal. I understand that some people could kind of make an argument is he looking for another fresh start just because, oh my God, Kevin Durant and Brooklyn's front office, they're not talking to each other. Oh my God, this is like DEFCON 1. Like we got to treat this as like this is like a crisis. Let's pump the brakes on this one. I don't think it's that serious. Now, if it gets into the point where you're in August or in September and you're not speaking, then maybe there's a little bit more than just smoke in the air at that point. Maybe there's actually some fire to that possibility. But as of right now, it's the end of May. Their season ended about a month ago. I think they're probably fine. It's just that Kevin's kind of taking some time away just to get away from basketball for a little bit to just, decompress. But I imagine within like the next couple of weeks or so, there will be some active communication between Brooklyn and Kevin. I don't see that as an issue.
I'm going the complete opposite direction. I'm not saying DEFCON 1. I'm not saying it is of the immediate urgency for Brooklyn to be panic mode. To me, nowadays, with how sensitive society is and how soft all of these major sport leagues are, communication is key. Back in the day, if you went on a vacation to Bora Bora and you had no cell reception because there was no social media, you was on vacation. If you did that Cancun trip like, LeBron James, CP3, and Melo and D-Wade tend to do, like the banana boat, and this was back in the day, GMs would be like, all right, I'll talk to you when you get back. Now, if you're not hand-holding your GM or your team in terms of just a text like, hey, good morning, babe, I'm assuming that is going to be grounds for, some kind of panic. But again, I'm not saying it's at the top. Because we are in 2022, and I'd say that Kevin Durant has not spoken to them in 3 to 4 weeks, I would say it's a bit of a head tilt. Right now, I'm at like DEFCON 3 out of 3, like obviously 1 being the worst. I'm at the very bare minimum to the point where I'm tilting my head saying, this is weird. You have to look at it from this perspective, right? Your second best player is potentially not coming back because obviously with the whole situation we just talked about with Kyrie, either he's going to be temporarily back or he's not coming back. It's not going to be a long-term deal. I don't think so. I think Brooklyn is pissed off with everything of how they've handled it, just like I said a few minutes ago. Now you go and you say, well, I wasn't able to do it with him. I just signed my max extension last season. So after this year, I have 2 more years here. Do I really want to stay here for the long haul by myself? I tried doing that. Actually, he's never done a solo thing because he's always had somebody on his team with Russell and Harden and obviously Kyrie and Steph and them boys. So I don't know if he's willing to do that solo act. I think he would have went to the Knicks if that's what he wanted a few years back when they made the decision to go to Brooklyn. I think that him not talking to Brooklyn, Kyrie being in the sensitive situation that he's in, Ben Simmons just had surgery, so their money is all tied up within 3 players basically, and they still need help. If Kyrie does not come back or is traded or is signs an extension in a sign and trade, I think Kevin Durant is going to want out. And I may be over exaggerating. I may be looking too into this. I may be talking about something that is nothing. Like Kyle said, it could just be straight up, I'm on vacation. I don't want to talk to you guys. Brooklyn got swept. Brooklyn had all the hype in the world once Kyrie was cleared. They had James Harden. It didn't pan out. They got Ben Simmons. He didn't play. KD was getting a lot of slander in that first round because Kyrie ain't show up and KD ain't play well. I would say that he's probably ticked off with the front office. Obviously, Steve Nash is not the ideal head coach for Brooklyn's system. People make fun of him and say on the clipboard it's a stick figure with pass KD the ball. It's kind of comical every time I see that meme on Twitter. But again, I'm not saying it's DEFCON 1. I'm not saying it's a red alert. But I will say that let's not ignore this and sweep this under the rug. Kevin Durant's camp hasn't reached out for a reason. Now, whether or not that's because they're just frustrated and need space, or they're contemplating maybe asking or seeking a trade, I don't know. But we will see as the offseason continues. I'm not going to go as far and say I'm not going to panic until September or August because the NBA free agency period does start at the beginning of July. If he has no input to this, if he has not spoken to them up until that point, I'm definitely leaning towards saying Kevin Durant wants out because obviously that means that the Kyrie signing hasn't been negotiated and taken care of. And that means that he's not interested in what Brooklyn is willing to do in the offseason to help them win. If the best player isn't included in any of those conversations, I would say that he's probably interested in getting out of Brooklyn.